Welcome, everybody. My name is Gunnar Knapp. I'm director of ICER, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to another ICER lunchtime seminar. And we have these frequently, and if you're not on our mailing list, give me your card and we'll certainly add you. To introduce today's speaker, I'd like to invite Marie Lowe to do that, Professor Marie Lowe, who has been quite active this year in helping organize an Arctic research group here at UAA, which I think is a great development and appreciate her efforts on that. So I'll let Marie introduce our speaker.
Thanks so much for coming. I'd like to introduce our speaker, Thomas Nilsen, who is the editor of the Barents Observer, and he is here on a State Department-sponsored visit to learn more about U.S. Arctic policy. And I think I'm just going to let Thomas begin.
Should we perhaps briefly go around the room and just let everybody briefly say who they are so he knows who the audience is? As I said, I'm Gunnar Knapp. I'm an economist and director of ICER.
I'm Heather Hudson. I work in communication policy with remote and indigenous people and have been in the far north part of Norway where you are from, so I'm really looking forward to it.
Fred Ulmer, chair of the Arctic Research Commission.
I'm Rangama, PhD student and research exchange student from Finland, and I'm in a public health research.
My name is Pauline Dekker, and I'm studying in Alta. So yeah, it feels like home. And I'm here as a master's student. I'm finishing my master's thesis.
I'm Linda Leask. I'm the editor here. We've corresponded.
Toby Schruel. I'm an energy and environmental economist. I'm a big fan of Begard Ulvan.
His brother is my neighbor.
Yeah, I've met Begard a couple times during my ski career. It's very pleasant to be around.
Muhsin Gatabi, assistant professor of economics, fields in regional and health.
Bob Leffler, I'm working sort of resource policy, typically specialize more in mining. Of course.
Sora Pathan, research associate, energy and data management.
Didi Hitchens, I'm professor emerita for UAA political science. I used to be the director of our North Pacific Studies program and worked a lot on Canada and the Arctic. And right now I'm director of a research project for the Arctic Council and the University of the Arctic to create a model United Nations, model Arctic Council program. In fact, I leave tonight for Archangel to go for our first trial run. And I've done faculty development, taking groups of faculty up into the Arctic, including to northern Norway and Svalbard.
Yeah, I'm Walt Parker, Institute of the North, and I retired from this institution in '83. I've been working with Norwegian scientists since the late 40s after the war, so I know my way around Norway a little bit.
I'm Mara Kimmel, and I'm interested in indigenous governance and overall local governance.
Vic Fisher, I'm, among other things, Director Emeritus of this institute.
I'm Virgil Choplett, traveling on behalf of the State Department.
I'm going to jump in since I really came in late. Diane Hirschberg, and
I'll go over there.
I'm education faculty here, and I'm also involved with the Arctic Human Development Report and the new Arctic Frost RCN, looking at sustainable development. But I also want to just let people know, if they don't know, we've got more Norway events happening all week. We've got a really exciting Winterfest, so events this weekend and a lecture next week. Got the flyers. Let me know if you want to know more about it.
Great, very good. Highly qualified people, absolutely everyone around the table. So I hope that I don't say anything wrong today. And so, what I will do here is I will give a presentation on 5 topics relevant for our Norwegian Russian Arctic cooperation in the north. And I promise you, I will not present you a kind of boring PowerPoint with a lot of texts and figures and so on. It's only photos. on this PowerPoint. But take notes if you want, and if there are any questions and so on, I'm sure there will be. We take them by the end. So that's very good. So I'm an editor of a news publication called Barents Observer. That is the only English language online news publication in northern part of Scandinavia. We do also publish in Russian, because one of our main focus is what's happening in northwest Russia and that part of the Arctic as well. So I do highly recommend you to write down the barentsobserver.com, and everything that I don't say today you can find there. Very good. I'm located in the center of the world, as every northern small communities used to present themselves. So here is the town of Kirkenes. That is a town that both in size and location is quite similar to Barrow here in Alaska. We are some 6,000–7,000 inhabitants in the urban area, and we are located nearly at 70 degrees north. But those are the two only similarities between my town and Barrow. We are in a place where we are still in ice-free, totally ice-free throughout the year waters. So we are the northeasternmost European harbor with a deep sea harbor with access to the north. In addition to having Vegard Ulvang as he lives some blocks away from where his brother lives some blocks away from where I live, I have 3 great neighbors. If I drive 45 minutes directly to the west, I'm in the European Union and in Finland. And if I drive 20 minutes to the east, I'm in Russia. And if I sail 1 hour to the north, I'm out in the Barents Sea and the Arctic Ocean. And that is the reason why the Barents Observer has its location in Kirkenes. You could say that we are a news publication that are the human radar for what's happening in our part of the Arctic. So we monitor what's happening on the political agenda in Norway, in the north, what's happening with climate changes, what's happening with security issues in Russia, what's happening with shipping, etc. So those are my 4 points today that I want to present to you. Let me first of all start with a hot potato in Norwegian politics. It's our Arctic oil and gas development. And just to remove one misunderstanding of what you could read out of the Sunday Times or the Washington Post or the BBC or Reuters or anyone that is running to write good Arctic stories for the time being, we don't have very much offshore Arctic oil and gas in our part of Norway. Actually, our only operational offshore field is this one. This is the liquid natural gas plant outside the town of Hammerfest on 70 degrees north that receives natural gas from the Snøhvit field in the Barents Sea. That is the only operational petroleum field we have in our part of the Arctic. This one was commissioned back in 2007, and the main market and the main reason why it was built was to supply the US market, the east coast of the United States. This is a multi-billion investment, and it's the world's northernmost liquid natural gas plant. Why liquid natural gas? Because this is so remote that building a pipeline to connect to the main pipelines from Norway to Europe is not economically a good idea. So we needed to build a liquid natural gas plant. But when the plant was starting to operate, the market it was designed to supply had disappeared, the United States. So due to the shale gas and everything that you know much better than me. I had the opportunity before I come here to Alaska to visit Minot and North Dakota and the fracking and so on. And that explains quite much of why United States is not a major market for Norwegian oil and gas for the time being. But just a few years after this plant was commissioned and we lost our US market, 2 very important events happened. First of all, We had the nuclear disaster in Fukushima in March, nearly 3 years ago now, that turned around the energy supply and needs in Japan. So actually today, Japan is a major market for this. And that happened approximately at the same time as the first commercial shipping through the Northern Sea route started. So we had, last year, we had the first liquid natural gas going from this plant straight across the north coast of Siberia to Japan. And by that, shortening the distance by approximately 50%, according to, or compared to sailing through the Suez Channel. These are how the liquid natural gas vessels look like. There is only one operational ice-classed liquid natural gas tanker right now. There are several companies that are building and are getting reclassed their vessels so that they can sail there. The biggest builder of liquid natural gas carriers are Sovcomflot, the Russian supplier right now, and they also aim for Arctic shipping of this. So this is how it looks outside the coast of my area. When that is said, we have huge plans, and when I say we, it doesn't mean Barents Observer, it means Norway. We have huge plans on developing offshore gas and oil fields north of the coast of Norway. This is not very controversial. The controversial part of the Norwegian oil and gas industry is in the Lofoten areas, which is actually further south, but far more important for the fisheries of Norway. So that there is a timeout in the Lofoten area. But then up here, there have been a lot of test drilling going on over the last few years. And in the news yesterday, if you read Barents Observer, you will see that there was another discovery of, the oil company got disappointed. It was gas. And that is actually the trend we see in the Barents Sea. There is not very much oil, but there is a lot of gas. But the challenge with the gas is that it's not very well paid. And we have this plant, liquid natural gas plant in Melkøya, I showed you the photo of. As long as the prices is not very good on the world market, it's not commercial feasible to kind of expand that plant. So the oil companies, they normally do not take up the champagne when they find gas, as they announced yesterday. So the oil is what they are looking for. The geological surveys of the Barents Sea shows that the further east you come, the more possibility there is for oil. So the more into the Norwegian part of the water you are, there are gas. The more nearer to the Russian continental shelf, the likeliness of oil is there. I will come back to that because that means big politics.
Which one is the operating one?
The operating one is this Snøhvit. That's the gas field, and this is the pipeline. Oh, sorry. Yeah, I should not touch this because this is a smart country. Okay, and here in Hammerfest, or on a small little island just outside Hammerfest is the plant, and this is the delimitation line between Norwegian and Russian continental shelf. So, but this is in a kind announcement. I said that it was not controversial. This part of the sea. That is actually not very true longer. Because earlier this week, on Tuesday this week, the Norwegian Ministry of Oil and Gas announced that they will open up 4 blocks here up at 74 degrees north. And that is a kind of not according to the agreement that the current Norwegian government, it's a coalition government, we don't have a majority government, signed between the different parties. And one of those parties is a kind of Green Party in Norway. And when they entered government in October last year, they said that they will stay out for the next 4 years, that's the parliament session, stay out of areas that possibly could be ice covered, or where it's possible to be ice. But up here at 74 degrees north, everyone knows that this is an area where we could get actually ice. So the government is in a way shooting itself in the foot. So they are inviting for a kind of more controversies in the politics regarding oil and gas. 74 degrees north, for those of you who have been in this part of the Arctic, is approximately Bjørnøya, which is the southernmost of the Svalbard archipelago. So this is Bjørnøya. When that is said, there had not been ice in those waters over the last 5-6 years. And we have seen, due to climate changes, that the sea ice is retreating further and further north. So the likelihood of ice is not for sure that it will be ice, but there is a slight possibility of it. Okay. Then we have one oil field that is said to be commissioned in October this year. I go back, it's just east of Snøhvit. That is an oil field called Goliath, and it's operated by the Italian company Eni. And they have designed this unique kind of platform. It's currently under construction in South Korea, and by the end of the summer they will tow it all the way around and up to the Barents Sea. This platform is ice strengthened, although it's very unlikely that it will be ice there, but the Norwegian environmental regulations are very strict, so they have said that the platform must be constructed in a way that it can resist a possible ice flake, or we don't have big icebergs, but this coming in. And that's also why you see that it's ice resistant around. They have technical problems with this platform. Up here you can see that they have built this kind of special shelter, because it's not actually the sea ice that is the challenge in the Barents Sea. It's the freezing in special weather conditions. And up here they have the gas separation plant. When they started to develop the Goliath field in the Barents Sea, they were supposed to supply the Melkøya plant that we saw earlier with natural gas. It was supposed to be built larger, but that will not happen now since the market is down. So they will have to separate the gas on the platform. And that technology is, according to some rumors, not working very well. And it will face some challenges in the winter periods. So we will not be surprised if this plant or this oil platform is actually not up and running this year, but that will be a kind of technical timeout. But they are working on it. This is not a big oil field. It's a small one. I don't remember exactly how many barrels of oil they believe it is there, but it's a kind of world supply for 2 days, 48 hours. But the world is using quite much oil, so it's not a very small field. It's a big one. Okay, that's the part about the Norwegian oil and gas development, which is of course also interlinked with the shipping that we see in the Arctic waters. And this is our kind of understanding of shipping in ice-covered waters, that it was totally frozen and very little accessible, etc., etc. This vessel here is a Danish one. It was the first ever vessel to sail in transit across the northern sea route. In transit means without visiting a Russian harbor. So it started in my little town of Kirkenes in 2010. And 17 days later, it made port call to a port just north of Shanghai in China with iron ore. So 2010 was actually the first transit of any foreign flagged vessel north of Siberia. But the Northern Sea route has a very, very long history. I show this map. It is of a voyage I made together with Russian and Norwegian scientists last summer, in last August, in the kind of 100-year anniversary of our great explorer Fridtjof Nansen, who sailed from northern Norway up to the Yenisei River in Siberia. So we had a kind of anniversary voyage to mark that. With Norwegian and Russian crew. But this little island down here in the eastern part of the Barents Sea, it's called Kolgujev. Already in the 17th century, there were some British captains, or naval captains actually, that conquered this island and started to make the plans to let that island be the big supply and shipping harbor for goods from China. They believed that they could find the northern sea route and their way to Asia by sailing in the north. And they had the understanding, of course, that they need special kind of vessel to sail in the ice. And this harbor here, that during the summer period is in ice-free water, would be a huge reloading facility for cargo to supply the Great Britain. That was in the 17th century. And as you all know, it was only 200 years later that the first vessel managed to sail through these waters. Gustav Adolf Nordenskiöld, the Swedish-Finnish explorer, that spent 2 seasons on sailing the northern sea route. Okay, but the northern sea route has been extensively used throughout the last part of the Soviet period. And if you read the speech of Mikhail Sergeyevich Gorbachev, 1st of October 1987, it's the so-called Murmansk speech he made. Then he presented huge plans for the Soviet Union to explore the Arctic, and he had 3 very important issues. He had a huge industrial planning. He said that he wanted to cooperate with his Nordic neighbors, and he said that the northern sea route would be the main transshipment route. And we all, at least here in the West, in Russia, they have a different view on that, but here in the West, we have an idea that Mikhail Gorbachev was the father of glasnost and democracy and perestroika and so on. Therefore, I show the photo of this house that I found in the great Russian Arctic city of Nilsen, that is the world's northernmost settlement on the mainland, so 73.5 degrees north. To show you, for me, it's a kind of illustration of both the failed industrialization of northern Siberia and the failed democracy and perestroika. So this, ladies and gentlemen, this is the headquarter of the late Soviet period Northern Sea Routes Administration building in Dixon. And you can read what's on the sign here. The offices of the tracé for the Northern Sea Route. Demokratia i glasnost, zakon perestroika. So democracy and glasnost is the law of perestroika. And look at the door, locked. And what we are experiencing in Russia right now is that both the glasnost and democracy is kind of, the door is locking, and the industrialization has gone much slower than Mikhail Gorbachev experienced. Okay, but there are flowers. They are growing, so there are hope. That's good. But there are a lot of regional shipping, inter-regional shipping, as we call it, along the Northern Sea Route. And the main user of that is the Norilsk Nickel, the world's largest producer of nickel and copper, located on the Taimyr Peninsula, that have built their own fleet of ice-breaking capable vessels. So when there is no ice, it goes straight ahead. But if there is heavy ice, they just turn around and use the very same vessel as a kind of icebreaker. It's a unique ship construction. It's actually developed in Finland, outside Helsinki, by the Aker Yards. This is in Murmansk. This photo. By the way, most of these photos is taken by me. So I haven't stolen the photos. There's one exception, and it's this one. I haven't taken that. Because with melting ice and increased traffic along the Northern Sea Route, there is, of course, a huge market for the Russian nuclear-powered icebreakers. But it's very important here to remember one important fact, and that is that the main aim of the icebreakers today is not actually to break the ice. Because during the summer period, from early July actually till quite late in November, at least over the last few years, there have been nearly zero ice. You can see some ice floes. These are the most ice-covered waters north of the Chukchi Sea on the Siberian side. But you don't actually need an icebreaker to sail through these waters. But you do need an icebreaker because in this area is probably the waters in the world with least search and rescue capabilities. You can't just call a helicopter if you get an emergency. there isn't just a towboat some nautical miles away from you. It can be days of sailing. So therefore, Russia has the rules of sailing through the Arctic waters that all foreign flagged vessels must follow icebreakers for security reasons, and that's a very good reason. And then, of course, you can argue, why do you need a 75,000 horsepower nuclear-powered icebreaker to supply search and rescue? But that's another question. This Rosia, it's actually retired now. It retired last autumn. But they have a fleet of other nuclear-powered icebreakers in the area. Russia is the only country in the world operating civilian nuclear-powered vessels. Okay, then this man. My good friend in Russia's Ministry of Foreign Affairs. His name is Anton Vasilyev. He is ambassador at large for the Arctic Council and one of the best Russian speakers for developing what we are looking for when we see it from Norwegian eyes, and that is circumpolar cooperation between all Arctic coastal states, all the Arctic 5 states. So yes, we have a neighbor in the east that is very challenging in many ways, but when we come to the Arctic, the cooperation is probably the best. And I do think, after now been traveling in the United States, I met a lot of people in Washington, and we've been here in Alaska and so on. I also have a kind of feeling that here on the top of the globe in the Arctic is the area where we have best cooperation between with our neighbors in Russia. And it's of interest to develop. It's very difficult to see, but because so little height over the water. But this is actually Novaya Zemlya. This is in the Kara Gate. So it's Novaya Zemlya here on the west. This is one of the most famous nuclear test sites in the world. And then we have the island of Vygard here on the east side. And this is the gate between Europe, and 5 minutes further east, you're in Asia. So it's the entrance to the Northern Sea route. Mr. Vasilyev was on the same voyage we had this summer. He is a very outspoken person for one statement. Russia does not see any possibilities of developing conflicts in the Arctic. There is no rush for finding out who owns the different resources and so on. And that is it's an important statement. I will come back to that when we look at when we come back to more Norwegian-Russian port facilities. I just wanted to show you one thing, because you can get an impression that there is very well developed infrastructure along the Northern Sea route. But as I said, they are in need of using the icebreakers for search and rescue. This is the main port of Dixon, and that is the port that Moscow highlights as the base that will supply you if you are in trouble when you are sailing the Northern Sea route. We come there in late August with this very little vessel, the Mikhail Molchanov. It's a Russian research vessel. Our captain said that no way that he would take his ship to this port and go portside here. He was afraid that this crane here will fall over the vessel. So we dropped anchor and went onshore in Zodiacs. So don't get the impression that there is a good kind of infrastructure to supply the growing amount of vessels sailing the Northern Sea route. And don't get the impression that you could bunker or get fuel at Dixon, which is actually the refueling point for vessels sailing the area. You just don't want to take your vessel to this port and get bunker oil.
Was it functional in that respect during the Soviet period?
Dixon was the main port, yes. It was very important for the shipping in the Arctic, yes. Not so today. So when you read it in a report, or when you get a PowerPoint presentation from a Northern Sea route official, remember, this is how it looks. So then you could try to read it on the better. Okay. Then finally, to just end the small talk about the shipping along the Northern Sea Route, I would say this is actually the most interesting. It's the Snow Dragon, a Chinese icebreaker. And the Chinese and the Russians, they have a kind of special relation. You know, the Russians are very eager to promote sailing the Northern Sea Route because they can charge. They can charge for the use of the nuclear-powered icebreakers and so on, etc. Well, the Chinese, they have their own interests. And for those of you who have followed the Arctic Council over the last few years, you know that China has a view on the Arctic that it's a kind of common heritage for everyone. And the United States is, of course, also very eager to promote that it's free sailing everywhere you go. Well, Russia has a kind of different view because they want to have their sailings inside the water. But this icebreaker here, 1.5 years ago, did a very interesting voyage. It crossed over from Akijärvi on the northern part of Iceland and sailed straight up to 88 degrees north, meaning nearly to the North Pole, west of Svalbard. Actually without informing the Norwegian Coast Guard that they were coming. But they sailed there, up to 88 degrees north, and from there, straight down to the Bering Strait. And by that proving that, hey, we don't have to go into any country's territorial waters. We can take the trans-Arctic route straight over and be within all kind of legal framework of international maritime shipping. And that is possible because the ice is often when we read the newspapers, we see that the Arctic sea ice has shrunken by 20%, 30%, 40%, etc. And then we see the maps of the ice extent. But that is probably not the most interesting for the shipping industry. The big challenge and what this Chinese icebreaker was proving was that the thickness of the ice is much less. So it's much easier. For this is not a very heavy icebreaker either. It's not like the Russian nuclear-powered ones. So they cross over. So be very well aware that the future of the Arctic is also the domain of shipping nations like China. And that is also actually why we in the Barents Observer, as a news publication, we do not call it the Northeastern Passage, as have been done mainly throughout European history. We call it the Northern Sea Route. And the reason for that is that we believe that in the future, it will be as much shipping going from Asia to Europe that it is from Europe to Asia. So, but we will see. And of course, you can see that this photo is not taken in the Arctic. Okay, that's neither my photo. It was just to illustrate. By the way, do you know the difference between a black penguin and a white penguin? The black penguins are those who are going uphill. And the white ones are those who's coming down. Okay. On the other side of the border in Russia, there is also one field that is in production for oil. And then I'm over to my third topic today, that is oil shipping in these areas. It's the Prilaslomnoye platform. You know this one from the media. That is the one that Greenpeace had a protest at in September last year, where some 30 of the activists were detained for 2 or 3 months in pre-custody trail in Russia. So what I'm saying is that, okay, we have one small gas field. We might have an oil production facility in October in Norwegian waters. We have this Prilaslomnoye that have started to drill, but they have not yet exported oil. They have tanks inside the vessel. But we have a lot of oil transport in the area, despite of little production. The main reason for that is all Russia's onshore fields in this part of the Arctic that, unlike here in Alaska, is not transported through pipeline. They have a small pipeline going out from the Nenets area and out to a port called Varandei. And from there, they ship it over the ice-covered waters in quite small oil tankers like this one from Sovcomflot to a huger oil reloading terminal. It's not a oil reloading terminal like we have in Valdez or other places. They use old decommissioned super tankers. This one is actually with single hull. And they reload the oil over to that vessel that is again awaiting huger oil tankers to come and take it up and bring it down to the oil harbor of Rotterdam or over here to the east coast of the United States. Last year, more than 12 million tons of oil were shipped out of Murmansk along the coast of Norway and to the markets. And not only coming by boats, there is also a lot of rail wagons coming up to Murmansk that loads these supertankers. And these railroads here were actually, or the wagons, and the man who started all this oil transport out of West Siberian fields, which is actually east of the Ural Mountains, so it's far away. That was Mikhail Khodorkovsky, the owner of the Yukos company. And you all know what happens with him. But they continue to do that. Okay, increased oil transport along our coast, very fragile environment, etc., caused concern in my country, in Norway. Afraid of the oil spill, we remember the Exxon Valdez accident, etc. And those days when this transport started, we didn't have a very good system of knowing what kind of tankers that come, etc. We didn't have an emergency response system in case there was a breakdown of one of the engine on the supertankers, etc. So we had to develop that, and I have to say proudly today that the cooperation between Norway and Russia regarding safe shipping for oil tankers is very, very good developed. So today we have, at any time, we have 3 tugboats that are on standby in case of emergencies. We have 1 outside the Lofoten area, we have 1 in western part of Finnmark, and then we have 1 in eastern part of Finnmark. So it's only a maximum of 5-6 hours from the emergency bell rings till we have a tugboat on site that can assist an oil tanker. And we have developed the separation line. This is a kind of a map that shows you the traffic of vessels during 1 year. So there is a lot of course, the fishing vessels. All the red are our vessels. But you can clearly see here that we have separation lines for the voyages. One going west south and the other going northeast. So in order to avoid collisions, etc. This can be quite rough waters and partly very foggy. And this time of the year, it's actually quite dark also most of the year. As I said, up to 70 degrees north. So that is a success story. Let me end this presentation here on this beautiful sunny Friday in Anchorage with another success story. And that is the international agreement signed between, or the bilateral agreement signed between Norway and Russia in 2011 on the delimitation of the Barents Sea. We have been quarreling between Moscow and Oslo for more than 40 years about who owns which part of this area. Was it the sector line principle that should be in place, or the medium line? So there was a huge area, 146,000 square kilometers. I don't know what that is in hectare, but it's quite a big area. In the Barents Sea that Norway and Russia were quarreling about for a long, long period. And then in 2010, Vladimir Putin, at that time prime minister, and no, was he president, prime minister, president, prime minister? Okay, Vladimir Putin and my prime minister, Jens Stoltenberg, they finally announced that they have found an agreement for this area. And that is, of course, an agreement that it benefits both parts. Russia got 50% of the disputed area, and Norway got 50%, a kind of win-win situation. So Norway is now actually the first country among the Arctic 5 states that have got its area defined once and forever. We have made our agreement with Russia with the delimitation line in the Barents Sea. We have had our continental shelf claim settled with the United Nations Commission on the Shelf Dividing, and we have signed the agreement with both Iceland and Greenland. So for the dispute to come is of course the further north. Who owns the North Pole? That is the big media question, of course. In a dispute, it's not actually a dispute. All the 3 countries that will claim the North Pole have agreed that they will follow the recommendation of the United Nations. There's Russia, it's Denmark due to Greenland, and it's Canada. And you know better than most others why the United States is not a part of that game. Okay, but I want to say one thing by the very end. I think we, from the Norwegian side, should be very, very lucky that we actually got this agreement in 2000. It was announced in 2010. It was signed the year or the same year in September. Then it was ratified in July the year after, and it entered force on July 9th, or when it was in 2012. Because I do not think that we will have managed to get such an agreement today. With the current nationalism wind blowing over the Russian parliament that we have seen over the very few last months, there is absolutely no way that the State Duma, the parliament, would have ratified such an agreement today. There are very many people in the Russian political system today that are mad at this agreement signed. So I don't think Vladimir Putin would have dared to sign such an agreement with the Kingdom of Norway today, because then he would have entered trouble with his own nationalistic Duma. So it was a time window when we got this chance, and that's very, very good for us. Okay. That is the coolest picture of a polar bear I ever taken. It's because it's not only a cool photo, but it's because it, in a way, it illustrates the climate changes in the north. The jump for the polar bear gets longer and longer from year to year. But I want to say by the very end, it is very exciting for me as a reporter and editor of Barents Observer to work with these kind of issues. There are so many things happening in the Arctic now. I'm very, very glad that I have the opportunity to visit Alaska and northern part of the United States to study the policies here, because I do think that the circumpolar information flow, you have it already between researchers and stakeholders and so on. But for us working in the information business, it's very, very important that we exchange information over across the circumpolar north. Also, it can be difficult. And as a reporter, my biggest difficulties today is actually to work in Russia. It's not an easy country to work in. That's me when I'm interviewing Russia's foreign minister, Sergei Lavrov. And I don't say that I need a helmet in order to do good articles in Moscow today. But I'm a bit concerned about the current developments we see there politically, but mainly down in Moscow. I see again the Arctic is the area of our great common cooperation. So thank you very much. That was 44 minutes speak. I end by saying the same thing as I did when I started. Everything I haven't said is here on Barents Observer. It might very well be that you have questions. Yes? Yeah, thank you. Yeah. I will then proceed. If it's okay.
Just very briefly, on your trip through the Northern Sea route, did you stop at Providania?
No.
I'm just curious the condition of that port at the moment.
Yeah. No, we had a 3-week fantastic voyage in the spirit of Fridtjof Nansen, who was the great bridge builder between Norway and the Soviet Union, or that time Russia. It was in 1913. You know, Fridtjof Nansen, he was with this vessel because he is an expert on ice, on sea ice, how to navigate in sea ice. He actually got stuck just west of the Yamal Peninsula in the Kara Sea, where he couldn't find his way through the ice. So we had to sail south again and then into more shallow waters near Yamal and further north. So his biggest problem was the ice. And I showed you the photo of Anton Vasiliev here on the vessel, and you couldn't see any ice. We didn't see any ice in the entire voyage last year. So the ice was not our problem. But what was our problem, and that was probably a bigger problem for us than the ice was for Fridtjof Nansen 100 years ago, was the Russian bureaucracy. I mean, to get the permission to enter these different ports was nearly impossible. It's, they defined all the western part of northern Siberia as border zone areas that is not open for foreigners. So actually the 2 only places we were allowed after more than a year of negotiation to go onshore was in the Kolguyev Island I showed you, and in the port of Vixen. And then in the final part of Dodinka also, where our voyage ended. But I was not at that part now. I would very much like to see much more, but working with permissions from the FSB is harder than sailing through the ice 100 years ago. That's a quote. Yes.
You said that the Arctic is a place of cooperation, and I'm wondering if you have gotten a sense through your travels and through your interviews, which nation states are more inclined to listen to what's going on in the Arctic? In other words, which ones are paying more attention, given that most of the capitals are remote? Which ones are developing more policies and actually acting on them?
Well, I'm Norwegian, so I can say that Norway has a very active policy, but it's not a black and white answer on that, because we have to remember the following important thing. That is that my part of the Arctic is actually the populated part of the Arctic. Many of you have been to the town of Tromsø, and you should remember that the town of Tromsø has more inhabitants than the entire Canada north of 62 degrees. So we have to take into consideration the importance for national economics, the different Arctic nations eager to make Arctic policies and develop it. And so for Norway, this is where we make our money. 2013 was the first year in Norwegian history when the 3 northernmost counties were on the top list of generating what you call revenue per capita. So way more revenue per capita in our 3 northernmost counties than in the southern part of Norway, and that is unique compared with if you look at Finland or Sweden or other Arctic nations. But when that is said, with the United States Arctic policy presented now and the implementation plan, absolutely all of the 8 Arctic countries have presented their Arctic policies. Then you could read those Arctic policies and say what is blah 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 and what is real importance and so on. But we have different views on the Arctic. I will highlight maybe 2 countries, and that is Finland, that have presented an Arctic policy where they suggest that the Arctic is going to, or the Arctic Council could positively develop to be a treaty-based organization. And that is quite interesting, because that is actually the opposite of what the United States and Norway want. We say we have the rules to play after in the Arctic for fisheries, for oil drilling, for shipping, for everything. While Finland is actually the spokesperson of what the European Union wants. They are looking at the Arctic as our common world heritage or something like that. And then I say 2 countries. The other country that have the same view on the Arctic is China, and they are highlighting it. So I don't want to say that one country doing better than the other and so on, but we have different backgrounds. But that the Arctic is really one of the places for developing geopolitics in the future around the globe is for sure. Yes.
And so you don't see that imbalance in focus as impacting that?
You can say, well, there are no Swedes. Yeah, you are Swedes. You are half Swedes. Okay. But what I used to say is that Sweden is probably, of the Arctic nations, Sweden is the one that is most or least interested in actually what's going on up in the high north. All the others have industrial kind of economic perspectives of developing the Arctic. In that way, there is a kind of slight balance, but that will change, because in Norway, Denmark, Sweden, Finland, and Iceland are more and more developing a common policy of defense cooperation, on cross-border infrastructure, trade, transport, etc. And so just now, maybe, but don't quote me on that. Don't quote me on the Swede part of that.
So you mentioned the EU. Could
Yes.
you just talk a little bit more about the EU's interest in the Arctic? As you know, the European Union is doing this environmental assessment of the Arctic, a 2-year project with 19 different research institutes involved, looking at a wide range of development options. And they're thinking through what is the correct EU position or interaction or whatever. It's hard from here to see what that really means and why they're doing it and how much money they're putting into it and how that's being accepted or not by the Arctic nations that are closest to the EU.
Yeah, the EU is not one body. It's the same as Russia. There are different interests within the Union. What I would like to say is that, first of all, we have an impression that the European Union defined the Arctic a bit different than us. And you will understand that if you go to London or to Berlin or to Paris and look at the weather forecast after the news in the evenings on TV. There we will see that the northernmost part of the European map is actually Helsinki, Stockholm, Oslo. So north of that, there are nothing to talk about. So kind of, oh, is it really, in my place, are we living there? Do you have an airport? Wow. And so such kind of thing. So there is a different definition of the Arctic from the European Union. Then there are different policies developed. I would especially like to mention the dispute, that is the right word, that have been between Canada, Norway and the European Union, Canada, Norway with the same interests, regarding seal fur. That the European Unions, or the European Parliament actually, voted in favor of a trade ban on the fur. In the same Arctic strategy developed for the European Parliament, stating that the Arctic is a kind of area we should preserve. It should be a nature reserve all of it, a kind of northern cap, like a copy-paste of what we have in Antarctica. But that has luckily enough changed due to the important work that the Commission has initiated and this work between the different policy holders. So this kind of preserve the Arctic, nature reserve, no activity and so on, is the European Union is partly moving away from that. But as I said, Finland with its proposal, Finland is not talking only about themselves. Finland was the one initiating the European Union's Northern Dimension program, that is actually the programs for northern part in the European Union. And they are the microphone or the spokesperson for exactly this thinking in Brussels, that the Arctic Council should probably develop to be a kind of treaty-based organization. And you will see this. This is it's not off record anymore. There's an interesting thing going on now between Washington D.C. and Helsinki. You know that you are taking over the Arctic Council next spring, and you will have it in the 2-year period till 2017. And now both and then Helsinki will take, or Finland takes over, and both Finland and the United States have unofficially already given signs that they are planning to use their chairmanship in 2017. United States by the end of the chairmanship and Finland by the beginning, to hold an Arctic summit. And that is not for the foreign ministers, not for John Kerry and the others. That will be with state leaders, and that will really bring up the Arctic Council to a place where I mean it belongs, on the very top agenda. So, but we will see who will actually take that Arctic summit. Will it be the United States that have the same views as Norway, or will it be Finland that is going to use their Arctic chairmanship as a kind of promoter of a treaty-based organization? And with treaty-based organization, it is this European preserve the Arctic thinking that is behind. So there are many interesting things here. Yes. Yeah.
I've been going to Arctic Council since it was formed in '96 as either a U.S. delegate or special delegate from something else. And, you know, what you're just describing is the Russians on the Northern Sea route and what have you, the plans. Because you have visions of ships sailing out of ports where the Arctic experience is almost zero, and not even seeing the Arctic mainland until they start to enter the Bering Sea. If you know, if a lot of them follow that Northern Sea route, the Russians are probably the far Northern Sea route. So it's, do you have any sense that Scandinavia and the Russians put enough pressure on to ensure that those crews have a minimum of training in ice and that they will have ice pilots?
Yeah, I will say that first of all, we must remember that the traffic along the Northern Sea Route is actually very limited. And the Northern Sea Route will not get a peak hour next year. There are very few vessels sailing. I was sailing through the Kara Sea last summer, and we didn't meet one single vessel. We met a small research vessel, but no one with cargo and something. So important, the Suez Channel and the Panama Channel is the major sea routes in the world. Suez Channel with more than 17,000 vessels sailing in 2013, while up in the north maybe there was some 50, 60 on transit. So it's not a big route. When that is said, some of the very, very best pilots and captains in the world regarding sailing in ice-covered waters are the Russians. They are very, very good. They have very, very long experience in it. Well, there is not that much infrastructure on shore, but the captains and the crew on board are some of the best in the world to sail. What I'm worried about is this. This is a boat that I was sailing on. I have this kind of thing that I'm sitting mostly at the office like many of you. And some weeks per year I have to go out in the field. So last year I was on this Nilsen expedition, but normally I sail as an expedition guide on board small cruise vessels in the Arctic. It's a good way for me to get out. This is a vessel that a photo is old. It was operated by Abercrombie & Kent, American company. It's called the Explorer. We used to sail around Svalbard archipelago. So 100 passengers, a very, very good one to sail in. And then we go down to Russia's White Sea area and so on. That vessel, after it changed its ownership some years after I was working there, ended up like this. Well, this is down in Antarctica, where the vessel is sailing in our winter season when it's summer down there. But this is what I'm afraid of regarding shipping in the Arctic. That's the cruise vessels. We have many, many examples that there are captains coming up to the Svalbard area and they take chances. And they sail into waters that are partly unmapped, sea maps and so on. And I'm sure that you have some examples of that here in Alaska also. So that's what I'm afraid of.
How did it get like that?
It rammed on iceberg. And then it got a hole, and luckily enough it sank after some 7-8 hours. So it was time enough to rescue the crew. But my fellow colleagues working on that vessel, they were not even able to bring with them the cameras and other valuables. It was the Chilean Coast Guard who rescued the passengers, and they were luckily in the neighborhood. And then there was a Norwegian cruise vessel from Hurtigruten that could facilitate and help them onshore in South America later on. But we don't have that in the Arctic. We might have a Norwegian Coast Guard vessel around Svalbard, but there ain't many Coast Guard vessels in northern Greenland or other places. This is problem. What will happen when we start to need to rescue people out of these areas? So that is my unfortunate. To say that's what I'm afraid of. It's a cruise vessel accident in these areas.
You've identified that side of the problem, but we're used to a very limited use of the Northern Sea Route. And, you go to Murmansk every couple of years and get caught up on what's going on, and everything's fine. But what's coming out in the European press and what have you is, if it's any part of it is true, why we're looking at a lot of new entrants, and that's what bothers me. Crews with extremely limited, if no any experience at all in ice. And Russians went to a great deal of effort from the Northern Sea Route almost a century ago now to make sure that the crews knew their way around. And I'm not sure that the new regime is going to spend that kind of money.
So you have a question?
Just to follow up further on Fran's question about the European Union, I knew that Canada balked at the EU becoming an observer, and so they didn't. But did Norway vote against it as well? I mean, I know it's not done by voting, but did Norway express their opinion that they weren't happy to have the EU?
No, Norway was very happy to have Canada to do the job.
Yeah,
So,
I thought that was what happened. I thought that Canada carried the brunt of it. And the statement afterwards says that this will be resolved and they will eventually be observer.
Yeah, and there's a process.
Yes,
that
exactly.
will not happen during Canada's chairmanship,
No.
I guess. But, it will.
Not very
Now,
much.
Norway is not the kind of country that raise the flag for conflicts.
No.
So
No.
if we can have anyone else to do it for us, then
That was why I was actually surprised when you said that, because having observed that quite carefully, I hadn't actually realized that Norway was opposed. I knew Canada was, and I knew they'd expressed it quite forcefully. Thank you.
Sorry, I think we're going to have to wrap it up. We do have a meeting taking place here at 1:15, but I just wanted to thank Thomas so much for your wonderful presentation and for everyone for coming. And please check out the Barents Observer if you have further questions. Thanks.